This week, it's Memorial Day 2025. There is no live show this week, but we do air 4 pre-recorded interviews from RSAC Conference 2025 from Zero Networks, Entrust, Digicert, and Keyfactor. Enjoy! We'll see you again next week on Business Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today.
It's Doug White, and we're here at Security Weekly at RSAC 2020. Did I say 2020? 2025. We're having a little numerology thing going on today. Could be a bit weird. I am now joined by Albert Estevez-Polo, who has 25 years of experience and a track record of being at the forefront of tech innovation with expertise in quantum computing, and not a lot of people are willing to say that, but there are a few. Zero trust, not a lot of people are willing to say that, but there are a few. And microsegmentation strategies, which was one that we want to talk about a little bit more. Now, before joining Palo Alto in 2011, he developed the first migration tool, which would later become what is called Expedition. Yeah. That's like the tool that's there now. And that's a big one for firewall migration and optimization and all that kind of stuff. And Albert is the field CTO of Zero Networks.
That's
all
right.
All right, welcome, Albert, all the way from Spain. So how about that?
Thank you for having me here, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for schlepping over here after like a long flight and power outages and all that kind of fun stuff that was going on yesterday.
That was zero trust.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on a few flights where I was there the moment we got off the ground and everything shut down behind us. Not quite that bad, but I was in ones where there were like weather and stuff, and they're like, we got off the ground, and you're like, yeah.
That's exactly what happened to me too, man. I realized when I landed what happened in Barcelona.
Okay, so one of the things that you brought up in your sort of prep that I was reading was this thing called automated microsegmentation.
Yes.
And I mean, I understand perimeter security. I mean, I've built, PIX firewall, ASA firewall. I mean, it's not Palo Alto, but it's Cisco.
Yeah.
And I understand that kind of perimeter security, and I've done that a lot. But I saw the term automated microsegmentation, and I said, okay, what does that mean? And I wanted you to help me out with that.
Sure. I mean, so for many years, people have tried to, deploy microsegmentation solutions, but they mostly fail, always for two reasons. One, because it relies on the customer knowledge about who needs to talk with who. And this is really, rare to find between customers to have this knowledge.
Right.
And the other one is that you need to do a lot of manual stuff. And I think that this is one of the two reasons that microsegmentation didn't work out really well, and that's why it's not adopted. So even that everybody says the microsegmentation will help you to really mitigate the lateral movement, how you do it. So I think that we found the only way that I will say, that is automating the entire process. So when we arrive to a network, the first thing that we do is classify all the endpoints that we are going to protect automatically. So we identify all the services, the processes, the operating system, everything which is inside the asset that you want to protect. And that automation as well help us to generate automatically the security policies that we need to provide to each endpoint to be sure that you only talk with the people that you need to talk only. Or for servers, tie the connectivity between only those two servers or whatever the servers they are. And to do that, we focus a lot in the inbound traffic, okay? Because the inbound traffic is not infinite, right? Outbound, you name, you can go internet to do whatever you want. If I try to generate security policies to allow you every specific outbound connection, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be an endless job.
Okay.
If you focus in the inbound, it's easier. So it's easy to protect you, by generating security policies automatically, and then getting rid of all the privileged ports. So all the SSH RDP, that we call it a ransomware deployment protocol, try to get rid of them and block them at the host level.
Okay. So if I create a session, so traditionally, so I'm just so we understand this. I know you understand it. I want to make sure I understand. I want to make sure that they understand it.
Sure.
So say it's an SSH connection.
Correct.
So I got an inbound port 22 CCP connection from my house to some endpoint inside. How does that micro segment? Obviously I know how to do that on a firewall. So I can put ACL rule in that says allow port 22 TCP.
Yes.
But that's not micro segmentation.
No.
So
and this is a perfect example, because SSH for us is a privileged port. Okay.
Yep.
It's a port that if you take ownership, you utilize it, you will get ownership of the machine that you are connecting, right? So what do we do? So when we are learning all the communications, we are going to detect that you are contacting this SSH server from whatever the IP you have. Mm-hmm. What is going to happen in 30 days after the learning process finishes, we are going to deny the inbound traffic for the SSH. And now what we are going to do is we are going to generate an MFA just-in-time policy for you.
okay.
So what is going to happen is you from home, you're going to try to connect to your SSH. That packet is going to be dropped by the IP tables that you will have in that Linux server. But we are going to capture that drop. And based on that drop, I compare against the policy. So if the policy says that allows you to connect through MFA, I will send you an MFA. You first authenticate against your MFA. And once you do that right, then only then, I will contact the server to open for you the port for an hour, 2 hours. So this is the most secure way to not knock in the door,
Yeah.
right? So
No,
you
that
first
makes
authenticate,
perfect sense.
and then I open you the door, only for you, not from anybody else.
And so that is a dynamic way.
Exactly.
Because we used to try to do stuff like that. So I always had rules and firewalls. When I was doing jobs as a consultant, I would go in and put rules in that allowed me to get in.
Yeah.
Because I need to be able to get in from wherever. Some people didn't like that, but
But
this,
that rule
this
was
means
static,
it's dynamic.
right?
Yeah.
That was static. So it was working 24/7. That rule was always there.
Yeah. But
That's
this
why
way
lateral
it's just-
movement happened, right? Because when you breach into a network through one machine, you have firewalls, but those firewalls have security policies that allows traffic 24/7.
And
so it's easy to do more.
And is that being maintained by like a token on the packet level?
No. So we keep all that knowledge, in our backend. And every time that we generate a security policy that is temporary, the system automatically removes them after the time expires.
Okay.
So it's all dynamic. So you don't need to do anything.
Okay.
This is the approach that I think that is the only way that I see preventing lateral movement through microsegmentation is by providing this type of capabilities. Automation to classify all the endpoints, automation to generate security policies, and now make security policies dynamic based in MFA. This is
like that.
game changer.
Oh, that's very nice.
It's awesome.
I mean, that definitely facilitates a lot of the traditional problems
Totally.
that we had, because one of the issues, so I know you want to talk a little bit about zero trust. One of the problems we had with sort of the early zero trust ideas was going to a client and saying, I really want to shut everything down. And they're saying, I want to open everything up, and then let's pick the things that are bad. And I'm like, that's not really the best way to do this. It would be better to close everything and then open the ports you tell me. And that was really difficult to do, especially for production systems.
Yes.
But so how does this work to facilitate that?
So we have then an engine, that is provided by knowledge experts. And every time that we detect new communications, new services, we already know for a lot of them what are the security policies that we need to put in place.
Okay.
So this speeds up the generation of the policies based on the expertise that we collected from many years of working with networks. So, if you have a cluster of Active Directories, you know which ports you need to enable between them in order to work, right? So we use this engine to generate and speed up the generation of security policies, which is really, differentiating.
So I would feed that in from day one to your engine, and then your engine's going to build that dynamic security
Correct.
policy that's in my Palo Alto like workspace control system, or where does that sit?
Our solution, what it does is orchestrates firewalls that they are already deployed in the customer network. So we don't need to deploy anything. Like
Okay, so that's standalone. So,
it's
okay.
agentless. It's
Okay.
totally agentless. So it's frictionless for deployment and even for testing, because you have already all the technology in place. So if it's a Windows machine, we are going to utilize the Windows firewall. If you have Linux machines, we are going to utilize the IP tables. So it's something that you already have in place. And the only thing that we are going to do is automate the whole process and orchestrate it like anybody did before.
Do you think that AI coming into the sort of attack space, which we're starting to see, this should help resist that, because the AI is always trying to find that snaky, where are there open ports, are there places for lateral movement? So that actually would be kind of stopped, I guess. I mean,
so what we think is the best approach following zero trust frameworks is least privilege approach, right? So try to close everything down, only open when is needed, and if the port that you're trying to connect is privileged, first do an MFA in order to be open for you.
Right.
If you do this, it's really hard for an AI system to try to find out a way to find a shortcut, because now nobody trusts in anybody. All the inbounds
everything's
closed.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to someone to try to do lateral movement, even with using whatever they want.
Yeah,
and
because all the ports are closed.
something even weirder that we did. We extended now network segmentation to identity segmentation as well. So we can even tell that your administrators, they cannot log onto your servers. So if someone steals your credentials, they will not able to log onto the server, because now the system is denying the access.
Okay.
And then what we do is we offer a mechanism through an MFA. So if you authenticate through an MFA, then I will add you to allow you to connect to that server. So imagine how we are reducing the attack surface. So now the port is closed, and you require MFA to get visibility of the port, and at the same time, I can add you, in the logon to do the login. But first, you need to prove that you are you. So this is the best example of least privilege, applied to the real world.
Of course. And I mean, there's still an identity management problem there, but the MFA is helping to leverage all that against
Yes.
What kind of MFA is that using?
So we integrate with any SAML solution
Okay,
out
so
there.
whatever, yeah.
So whatever.
Okay.
So even we have customers that they develop their own, and as soon as it's SAML too, we can integrate with any.
So when people want to implement this, what's that path look like going from, I mean, some of this is just zero trust, but I mean, when you start with, like, say, a mid-sized company, and you say, we want to go from, right now we're doing Doug's model of I open port 22 and allow traffic, to something like this, and say we have Palo Alto. I mean, I know that's part of your background. So what's that sort of process like? I mean.
So usually it doesn't matter what is the vendor that you have, even that we have a really cool integration with Palo Alto.
Well, yeah,
networks.
the hardware wouldn't matter, I guess, yeah.
So because at the end of the day, because we are in the endpoint, learning from the endpoint perspective, the traffic needs to be allowed everywhere in order that the communication happening, right, from endpoint to endpoint. So we can learn and then generate the security policies to be applied at the endpoint level. So now that you are shrinking the security policy at the host level, whatever the policy is in between is like less risky, because what we've seen in the field, the customers, they don't do a really good job by generating security policies, even less when it's in the same segment, which is nobody is applying security policies.
So just to get some steps. So the one of the first steps would be to just develop your commitment to zero trust. So I mean, this is how I do it. You got to convince me you're committed to this. Then we develop security policy that sits there, that this is going to be, what do we know we want to do, and how do we control those users' access and so forth. And then once we've done that, we can put this into the engine, and the engine can then allow these connections.
It's even easier.
Okay.
Because, the first thing that deploying zero networks, it takes like 2 hours, You know?
Okay.
Because the hardest part is to get a virtual machine already installed with a Windows server. This is the hardest part.
Wow.
So once you have that, we integrate already with your, Entra or Active Directory, whatever. So we do the discovery automatically. So we classify already your.
Okay, so it just happens.
Yeah, yes, it just happens automatically. And then you decide which machines you want to start monitoring to start learning. And just because we don't need to deploy any agent, we establish communications with all the assets.
Is that an agent that you put on the machine?
No, nothing. We establish a communication.
Wow.
Using WinRM or SSH.
Okay.
So we connect to each machine, and then we start collecting all the information.
Okay.
And then from that moment, our engine starts learning, and in 15 to 20 days, you get the first batch of policies that you can validate, you can simulate before apply to see, hey, this is
that's
covered.
a nice thing.
Yes. And then as soon as you get confident, you apply them. Usually when you deny the inbound, for example, for your clients, customers, if you deny the inbound, nobody will notice.
So I guess what I would get to then with that is, so why aren't people doing this? I mean, this is, I remember my way was like, we're going to do this and you're going to live with it. Get over it. Quit whining. But this sounds like it's very doable,
Totally.
In terms of even like a mid-size or something could go this route.
100%.
So what are the barriers to people doing this?
So the barriers is we have to deal with the stigma of the word microsegmentation, because again, so legacy companies out there, they try to sell you microsegmentation for many years, and the only thing that I think that they generated is a lot of chaos, problems, and even projects that they are endless. It is a lot of ROI that you need to invest. You need to put a lot of people, professional services to make it work. So at the end, the CISOs, they want to see something that is doable and has a start and has a finish.
Right.
And the majority of these projects, if you are not using automation, is you know that you are going to start tomorrow, but you don't know when you're going to end. This is what we are breaking. Again, and this very disruptive.
Cool. Well, thank you, Albert, for joining us. Albert from zeronetworks.com. You can go there and check this out. You can also go to securityweekly.com/zeronetworks RSAC. Thanks for joining us. Keep hanging around. We got more content to come. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you. Hey, thank you.
We're still here at RSAC 2025. I'm Doug White with Security Weekly. Ron Howard's going to speak in like an hour, I think, next door, and there's people coming in, so it's been getting hot. I'm here with Chris Hickman from Keyfactor.
Hey, Doug.
And hi. And Chris is the Chief Security Officer at Keyfactor and was a leading provider of secure digital identity management solutions for that company, and that's what they do. And as a member of the senior management team, Chris is responsible for establishing and maintaining Keyfactor's leadership position as a world-class tech organization with deep security industry expertise. He leads client success initiatives, helps integrate the voice of customers directly into Keyfactor's platform and their capability set. That was pretty good.
That sounds sounds like my day-to-day.
Yeah. So, we were talking about like travel and all this kind of, so that's what you're doing with this customer success team, and you're going around all over the place?
It's not so much customer success directly, but it's really taking what our customers need for their next challenges around cybersecurity.
Okay.
And making sure that we are reflecting that correctly in our industry and across our products.
Okay. So, primarily what I know you wanted to talk about was post-quantum computing and the implications of that. And I've certainly been following that. I love technology for one thing, and I love weird technology even better. Yeah. And so this was a thing that started evolving a few years ago, and some fairly forward-thinking people got in there and said, that if this came about, and it's rare actually to see that kind of forward thinking. Like, well, this could happen. Usually people are like, we'll worry about it when it gets here. Yeah. But NIST started worrying about it well in advance.
Yeah. About 15 years ago, they really started to recognize there's a problem on the horizon.
Yeah.
And started to look for a solution to that problem, which was a new type of cryptography to protect data against quantum computers.
So, right now, if I'm, say, a mid-size.
Yep.
How worried should I be about that?
I think everybody needs to be worried, to be very honest with you, and that's not to be sensational in what's going on. I like to look at it from two different vectors, right? The first one is there's this new emerging risk that's coming around in a quantum computer. And while a quantum computer can not do a lot of things, there's a few things that it's really good at. And one of the things it's really good at is factoring numbers, which is what our cryptography today is based off of. The other thing that we should probably take into account, and this makes it as much a today problem as anything, is people are stealing the data to decrypt it later. So this notion of harvest now to decrypt later. And organizations are having data stolen and stored for it to be decrypted later. In addition to that, I'll add the element that simply says, we've had our current cryptographic standards for almost 30 years now. It's time for this evolution of cryptography to take place. Not a lot of things in this business have lasted for as long as some of our crypto standards. And it's a good time for organizations to take a step back and say, okay, you know what? I need to do a better job protecting my data. And the combination of all of those things are really making this a fundamental shift towards starting to adopt some of these new cryptographic standards.
What do you think about like the time horizon? I mean, I really liked what you said about this harvest now, decrypt later, because I wonder what the time horizon's like on that kind of stuff. I mean, that legacy data is going to be floating around out there for a long, long time, because even no matter what we do, somebody's still going to have it on a hard drive somewhere.
Absolutely, and I mean, different data has different shelf life, if you will, right, and different relevance over a period of time. One of the things that organizations really need to consider is what is their long life data, right, and how best to protect it. One can assume that eventually that data will be able to be decrypted. What the latest standards that we've seen come out from NIST and their latest guidance is that we should no longer be using things like the RSA protocol and ECC algorithms past 2030.
Okay.
So the timeline is drawn, if you will, from a suggestion standpoint. As a matter of fact, they've said even if you have to go a little bit longer, you really can't use it beyond 2035. And that's sort of a standard now, because if we think about what's involved in changing that cryptography, it's a very significant change that needs to happen now in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, the technology's not getting there tomorrow, but, pretty soon.
Some of it is.
Well, I mean, it's there. But in terms of it being mainstream and, people being able to run down to Best Buy and buy a quantum decryptor, kind of thing. It's not here today, but it is coming
I don't know
soon.
if that day will ever come, to be honest with you, but, you'll be able to lease space you can do this today, lease space on a quantum computer in a cloud environment, or you can go and buy one from a specialized vendor.
Well, you may never be buying a physical thing, but you may be able to buy that space to do what you want. And the evolution of like criminal behavior, where we literally have criminal organizations selling access and, like ransomware as a service and all these kind of things. It's
Absolutely.
Like, I'm sure somebody's going to be selling, you can use our quantum computer for anything you want.
And the algorithms that are needed to sort of, if you will, break the current what we're calling classical cryptography have been published for a number of years through a mechanism called Shor's algorithm. So it's a known way to do it. All we're waiting for is a big enough quantum computer to be able to do it.
Yeah, and then that's just going to break all of a sudden. I just think one
if
day,
if it hasn't already.
Maybe. I
know.
think any time somebody's going to announce, guess what? We've now got
or
the capability.
Or honestly, the scarier scenario is that they do it and don't announce. So if it's a nation state or something like that, they're probably not going to publish their work.
Absolutely, and not immediately.
Yeah.
And so until it becomes obvious that they're doing that, because they could literally be breaking every secret on Earth.
Yeah.
And why would you? Now you're into like World War II crypto, right? Where it's like, we don't want to block this attack because then they'll know we broke the crypto, and so we're going to hold off.
It's the whole Enigma story over again.
Yeah. And Purple was another one, the Purple algorithm of the Japanese submarines and all that, and they would just let the attack go through because they don't want them to realize that that's a creepy situation.
Yep.
But we're there again. With this kind of crypto. So as this does start developing, what are some of the mistakes that like companies are making now to prepare for this? Because I'm telling you right now, I talk to a lot of companies, and I can hear it already in my head. They're like, look, I know out there somewhere we got to worry, but and then when it gets here, they'll be like, oh, because they weren't going to know it. So what are some of the big mistakes that they're making right now?
So the big mistakes are exactly that. not doing anything. To be honest with you, this is a long road. It's going to take years for organizations to be able to practically put a program in place. But it sort of starts with figuring out what we've already got. So the way I like to frame it, right? We've always dealt with cryptography in our organizations as kind of an RFP checkbox, right? Do you support this? Do you support that? Yes, no, and then just forget about it. Right? And the problem is now we've built almost 25 to 30 years of technical debt around cryptography, and we just don't know where everything is. We need to turn the lights on in the room and start to find all of this, so we at least know what we can map out for a migration plan. You can't manage and migrate things that you don't even have a clue are in your environment.
I agree.
And that has to happen before you can even take the first step of doing that migration. So, I think the mistake that people are, biggest mistake to answer your question is they're not doing the things that they can be doing today to prepare themselves for that future step that they're going to need to take and setting themselves up to be successful and to be agile with cryptography going forward.
I mean, is that almost like a crypto data flow diagram? I mean, one of the things...
It's a discovery mechanism.
Yeah, it's the same kind of idea, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, one thing we always told people is you have to know where your data is.
Absolutely.
And where it goes.
Yeah.
And who can touch it.
Yeah.
And as you add crypto to that, you're going to also need to know who can decrypt it, who can get to it via crypto, and all these kind of pieces.
And I mean, if you think about where cryptography is in our organizations, it's in applications, it's in hardware, it's in software, it's on our network, it's everywhere. It's pervasive. Like we've constantly said, encrypt the data as it moves, right? We've taken that methodology and moved it to our cloud providers, and we've moved it, everywhere our data is, our mobile finds, so on and so forth.
Interconnected.
And we have to find all of that because we can't just upgrade one bit and leave the others. It actually needs to be done in a complete ecosystem type of way.
And that's a tough sell, right, in production, because in dev, it's not so bad. I mean, in dev, I can go, I'll upgrade my VPN, I'm good. But in production, I've got VPNs going all over the place, the different clouds, and everything depends on all those connections. And if I take one down, everything stops.
And further your VPN example, you need to know what support devices have to do that connection in the first place, right? So if you're going to use post-quantum cryptography with a VPN, you got to know that all your endpoints are capable of launching a client that are capable of doing that type of cryptography, so on and so forth. So it's very in-depth for organizations to even start to frame the problem and then decide what priority they need to give to what data and what data sets and what data flows in order to mitigate their highest value assets first. And then, take the rest and move down it from a risk-based perspective.
And then I think that ends up resulting in a kind of, we've got that lab over there where we've just had to isolate that because the legacy equipment in there will never support this. I mean, we just cannot possibly. I mean, just like when you had an old mainframe or a mini computer or something, and we put it down in the basement and said, okay, because I've set those networks up. And I'm like, look, nobody gets near this thing.
And you know what? They still exist, right? I mean, there's lots of mainframes that still exist. And can they run post-quantum cryptography? If not, how am I going to deal with that some way? So there's so many moving parts. And that's why I say, plan now, don't panic now. It's not the time to panic, but it is the time to plan, understand what the size of the problem is for your organization, and so that you can have the right plan prior to the panic moment being here.
Do you think they're doing that? I mean,
we're definitely seeing that. Some industries are moving faster than others, but the industries that are going are definitely making the move now.
Okay, that makes. I mean, I know when the NIST contest came out. I was just like, I guess it was like very nerdy, but I was like, I'm so happy to see this because it was really one of the first times I truly felt like somebody actually proactively addressed this issue. You never see that.
Absolutely.
It's usually like after it starts becoming a huge issue, somebody comes in and does it. Do you think that in the infrastructure world, so now my experience has always been that when you get into that ICS world, they're always behind because their equipment was designed to last for 60, 80 years and upgrading it is really difficult. I mean, is that like a huge focus that we need to be on?
It is, and it's going to require different methods of mitigation. You can't. No company out there is going to turn around and say, "I'm going to replace everything, overnight, start fresh with a new, network and and hardware and so on and so forth. But the reality is that you're going to have to take multiple different approaches and be able to stay agile. And I think one of the key pieces here, right, is building agility into your next generation of cryptography. So that, because there's certain things we don't know about this post-quantum world, right? Like,
True.
We don't have a quantum computer today that can break the traditional algorithms.
Right.
We also don't have a quantum computer that can break the new set of algorithms.
Right.
What happens if one of those suddenly comes into question? How do we continue to be agile across this space? So let's build something now that will continue to last through the next iterations and generations, and allow people to continue to be successful and just manage cryptography as a critical pillar of a business versus just sort of a thing the security team does.
Yeah. Do you think that's going to look like the original crypto stuff? Because when we first started doing crypto, I was working on systems that had no crypto. It was like no such thing as crypto, and people were like, make the password something other than root. You're probably fine. and a couple of years later, you were screwed. and people were talking about, because I remember those early conversations, and when people started saying, don't use Telnet. Use SSH, and I'm like, okay, I guess I better learn something about this, because I never took crypto in school because it didn't exist. It did in some places, but not where I went. And so, do you think that's going to follow a similar pattern as it comes out?
I think honestly, yes and no. Yes, it will on one level, and no, it won't on another. Again, by having that visibility, by having that awareness, by sort of taking that 30 years of cryptographic debt and getting visibility on it, I'm hoping we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. But we're still going to rely on our vendors to build cryptography into their applications and hardware and so on and so forth. And we're going to rely on their implementations. But we're moving very quickly towards a trust but verify at each step, where I think before we've just trusted, now we're also going to continue to verify.
So we kind of don't trust.
So we don't trust as much, because by trusting too much,
but I'm going to check your references.
Exactly.
No, I think that makes sense. I do think that, like you said earlier, there's a sort of coming storm of the early going where, we're going to find holes in this that we didn't know about. Because nothing's perfect, and as it gets developed, it's going to become a problem. So I'm sure you'd like to say how Keyfactor is really focusing on this.
Yeah, so at Keyfactor, we have a series of products that are already post-quantum enabled. So in particular, we have a product that issues asymmetric or PKI certs called EJBCA that already has adopted the NIST standards for post-quantum cryptography. So customers who need to move early can do so in a standardized way. We have an orchestration platform that brings automation orchestration so that you can deploy those in a human touch way, right? So we can automate all that. And that brings the crypto agility into play as well. That also has a discovery component and a risk analysis program. So we can sort of take a look at, hey, these certs are more risky now, or these certs are going to be riskier at this point in time. We can feed that engine with latest and greatest intelligence.
I think I even want that at my house.
Yeah,
I've got enough gadgets at my house that are using crypto that I'm like, this could be a problem if my VCR is getting compromised.
And then we also have higher level, if you will, applications for helping organizations do signing and things of the sort. And then downstream, we also have a group that looks after our Guardian or our Bouncy Castle stack, which is a cryptographic library. So if you need to build a new application, or you need to add post-quantum cryptography into your application, we have a stack that's available for that
really
as well.
Cool. Well, Chris, thank you for joining us here at RSAC. If you want to find out more about this, you can go to securityweekly.com/keyfactorrsac, where we got a nice landing page for you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and other than that, it's a little warm, but that's the way it goes.
We're not freezing, so it's good.
All right, thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Welcome to the RSAC Conference 2025. We're here live in the Cyber Risk TV studio from Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. There's a lot of Moscones, so you have to kind of try to keep up with them and try to make sense of all this stuff. I'm Doug White, and joining me for this interview is Jordan Abnam, the CISO of Intrust.
Thank you, Doug. Great to be here. Happy to talk to you about post-quantum cryptography and how AI is changing our cybersecurity world.
Yeah, I'm like 100% on board with I was reading like the things you had put down, and I'm 100% on board with post-quantum, computing. I'm completely on board and happy that NIST started having people put together potential algorithms 15 years ago, because part of that was, wow, somebody's doing something the right way for a change, not after it happened, not after a big disaster. So I'm really solid with this being a big priority for organizations, which I think. And so you just came up with a cryptographic security platform.
Yep.
And can you maybe tell me a little bit about what that is and why that's important?
Absolutely. So our cryptographic security platform is a one-stop shop for enterprises to control their cryptographic keys, their certificates, and their secrets across both hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, and on-prem environments.
So this is going to be one of the big problems, right? As you move into this the quantum age. But as you start moving that direction, which Jeff and I were talking about this morning about how I used to say, well, it's probably 3 to 5 years. But then I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said, yeah, but you don't forget we could sell you quantum computing out of the cloud. And I'm like, oh, wait. So I'm going to revise that.
Let's talk about that.
So, I would ask you that question, what do you think
do
that time frame is?
So I separate it between large nation states who have abundance of resources and perhaps the availability of quantum computing to the rest of us. And for nation states, I foresee that's going to be in about the 5 year mark. I think it's going to come pretty quickly. For the larger masses, it's probably going to be in the 10-year mark. However, we know that threat actors are doing what's called harvest now and decrypt later.
Oh, yeah.
So the call to action is now for enterprises to put together how they want to solve for this and the solutions they need to protect their data today.
Well, I'm always telling people that they need a data flow diagram for cryptography. Not just we have a database or we have a bunch of files, but now we need to know where our crypto tokens, all the things we use crypto for, where are those things located and how do we manage it? Which sounds like that's sort of where you're going, is to get that data flow diagram that a lot of people have never thought about before. Really, just when I go to them and say, do you know where your data is? They're like, there's some over there, I think. Now we're going to them and saying, do you know where your tokens are?
Yeah.
And they're going, I've had people go,
what's that?
When you say tokens, and you're like, this is going to be bad.
So let's talk quickly about how enterprises can prepare for quantum computing and specifically the transition to post-quantum cryptography. The first step in this process is what I call the pre-planning stage. And that is where we as security leadership need to gain the attention of our fellow executives and start talking about why this is an issue, the risks it poses to our organization, and start aligning resources, budgets, and strategies to get it done. Then, like you said, we need to take an inventory. We need to understand where within our enterprise our cryptographic assets exist. And then after the third step was we need to start prioritizing. We know not all of our cryptographic assets and our data is created equally. We want to prioritize the data that has the longest shelf life because of that harvest now decrypt later, right? We want to protect that for the long term. And then after we know how we're prioritizing the data, we've set that in place, we want to create a roadmap. We want to look at where we're going from start to finish, the checkpoints, the journeys, the outcomes. And then most importantly, last but not least, we want to test our PQC, our post-quantum cryptography, before we start using it. How many times have we seen folks try something new, try it in production first, and oops, it breaks it, right? We want to make sure we're testing that first.
Well, I'll get along. For years, so I was going to ask you, so do you think, and you can say no, because I don't know how, I really don't know how I feel about this. Do you think that leading into some of that, I agree with you on everything you said, maybe some tabletops or even live fire exercises, because when I was doing disaster stuff, if you go to people, if I come to you and I say, do you have backups? You go, yes, we do.
Always is yes.
Are they good? Yes. No. Are they encrypted? Yes. Are they safe from all harm? Yes. And, they want you to then walk away. And then when you go, let's go get some. Pick a server, any server, we're gonna restore. And they're like, wait, no, we don't do that. So do you think like a maybe a live
Yes.
fire with this would help?
Absolutely. Control validation is key here. What you're referring to is the control validation process.
Absolutely.
That's how we know our controls are working.
Yep.
And it's not just for PQC, it's all the other controls in our environment, the identity verification controls, every control in our environment, we should be testing on a continual basis based upon risk, based upon our environment tolerance, and based upon our programs.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I just think if you're out there and you're thinking about this, and you should be thinking about this,
Absolutely.
you probably do need to be starting with this conversation, and then maybe a tabletop to get an idea, and then maybe a live fire to say, okay, we need to find all these things, and which ones are we not finding, and what do we not know about, and on and on and on.
Absolutely right.
So another thing that you had mentioned was about this involving deep fakes and all this, because this is another part of disaster planning that we used to do, which is, this social engineering component. And we were just testing them in a very limited way, but now it's become much more complicated, because I always thought this, though. I will tell you, I'm going to tell you, I thought this for a long time.
You were ahead of the time.
Well, I was thinking, like, what if somebody could, I wasn't thinking this far ahead. I was like, what if somebody could pretend to be somebody else? And I've done that. I mean, I did a pen test once where I went in the front lobby, talked to the security guard. I said, my uncle is Mr. and the names are on the phone. I was like, my uncle is Mr. Wallace, the CEO, and he's out in the limo. He's really mad. He wants me to get his briefcase. Cool. And the guy was like, you know where his office is, right? I'm like, yeah,
absolutely.
It's in Suite 907. I'll be right back. And I went upstairs. The goal was just to steal a piece of stationery out of this guy's office. But I mean, I was thinking about that even then, and social engineering has revolved around that kind of sort of fakery all along. But now you start talking about deep fakes and synthetic personalities. I love that term.
Yeah.
I feel like one. I mean, so where is that going?
We know that deep fakes and synthetic identities, is what we're calling it, are on the rise. And Doug, this is a big problem thanks to generative AI. Generative AI is readily available for us on smartphones. You can download it on your mobile device. Ease, it's free. These products are available. You can go to a website.
Buy some time.
You don't even need to buy it. It's literally
you get it for free.
And these synthetic identities are causing a huge challenge for us. And so to combat that, what organizations need to do is adopt a multi-tiered, multi-layered approach to ensure that the identity of their customers is verified throughout the journey. So let's talk about the journey real quick. Okay. The beginning of the journey, the onboarding of the journey is really most important. That's where you want to detect these synthetic identities first, so you can prevent the deepfakes as well, so you can prevent that from continuing down the onboarding journey for the customer. Okay. Then once the customer is onboarded, we also know we want to continue to validate their identity with multi-factor multi-factor MFA, multi-factor authentication, as well as PKI, so we can validate the identity as well as the device identity they're coming from. And during this process, what that does is it starts to create an environment where we can, using artificial intelligence and AI identity verification solutions, we can start understanding when there's an imbalance in the risk, and we can start pop-up authentications during high-value transactions or high-risk transactions that the user needs to verify themselves again.
How does that change in quantum? I mean, as we shift from I've always, so pre-quantum.
Today.
Well, no, let's go back a little further than that.
10 years?
Even modern stuff. I walked into a facility, there was a guy standing there, and he looked at the color of my badge.
Sure.
And said, you have this color badge. That's one check mark. He then looked at my photograph and said, you seem to look like the person in this photograph. Yeah. And then they scanned a badge. I put my hand on the reader, and they said, I think this is sufficient, but we'll repeat it 2 or 3 times before you actually get to your office, because, this is this. So that's one world. And that was pretty effective, but not at scale.
Sure.
Works fine when you got 12 people going through there every day. You got 12,000, it's going to be a bit of a problem, although they could probably do that too, because you just keep hiring more and more guards.
Exactly right.
And we moved into this, what now, which is just sort of tokens and things like that, which I think there's a great range on that. Everything from this is just an unencrypted token that, some coder wrote, and it says if X equals 17, connect.
Sure.
To crypto tokens that we do have now.
Yep.
So even currently there's a lot of problems with this. So as we move into this future, where are the big problems going to be?
It's the speed and scale that these attacks are coming at us. So we know with our current set of AI tool set, these come at us relatively frequently. Tomorrow, with post-quantum computing, I'll say quantum computing, we know the threat actors are going to have that available to them, and they're going to be firing off these perfect phishing emails at us at speed and scale that are going to be alarming to us.
Right.
So our technologies, our AI-enabled security protocols need to advance along with that to meet or exceed that of the threat actors. And that's going to be the challenge for us. That is the challenge for us today.
No, I agree, because I mean, I think this all comes back to trust, right?
Absolutely.
Because I have been saying that for years as well, which I really wish we had a way that we could know who was who. I mean, if I go on a website, I think it would be great if we had a way to say these are authenticated users. These are, here's a bunch of clowns, and you could listen to them or not, but we don't know who they are. They chose to pass. And I mean, do you think that's sort of this future? At least, I don't think there'll ever be a non-anonymous future, but no. I mean, in this sort of corporate environment, I really need to know that I'm talking to you, or I'm talking to him, or that instruction came from me, because I saw a case where they called me about forensics on this, and of course the answer was really like, sorry, you're screwed. But they got deep faked. Yeah. It was just a voice deep fake, and it sounded like the CEO, and this accounting clerk received a phone call and said, I need you to change these routing numbers, and I need them changed right now.
Yeah, urgency.
And and this person didn't really know the CEO. It was going to be sort of strange, and the person sort of panicked and did it, and $150,000 was gone in a second. And they were calling me, going, "How do we get this money back?" And I'm like, "Well, first you need an army, exactly. and you're going to need some boats, because the person that did this is probably not
nowhere near us."
Yeah. So I mean, how do we beat these kind of things? So when I get a call from you as my superior, how do I know it's you?
Yeah, good question. So there's push authentication that you can do. There's identities. Identity is verified in multi-stages throughout the process. So we can have AI-enabled identity verification that is using your smartphone, using your computer, using other methodologies that uses AI to validate that you are the person sitting behind the phone, sitting behind the computer that matches our enrolled credentials for you.
Okay.
Once that's verified, then you can provide that satisfaction, that guarantee, that gratification to the person that you're requesting this of, so that they know that it's you're authentic. Now, what's important is this can occur throughout many life cycles in our process. It's not just through, hey, I'm the CEO, I need you to do this payment for me now. It also could be for privileged access. Well, step off, right? Like our database administrator needs to go in and oops, we made a mistake. We need to modify this database query right now. But before we're going to give them that entitlement to do that in real time, we're going to push something on their smartphone. They're going to look at it. They're going to turn their face. They're going to do a liveliness check. And that's going to validate and verify that DBA is actually the one who wants to issue that command. Okay. They do it. It lives for maybe 5 minutes, however long we decide. And then it times out and they have to log back in and do it based on the criticality or the severity of that.
Yeah, I mean, and all that stuff's always kind of frustrating. I mean, that's the way security works, right? I mean, it's just like I can't get in this building without going past a guard and a scanner and all these things. And okay, that's the trade-off.
It is a trade-off.
How do you use the same kind of thing to validate documents? So like in today's terms, like a digital signature, that technically should be legit. I mean, anything can be faked, but so this would be a more advanced version of that.
Let's go back to the onboarding process, because we know during customer onboarding, if a customer gets frustrated with the process, we know that they're going to bounce, right? And it's really high numbers. Like we know that if you try to enroll for a new bank account and you're frustrated about the enrollment process, you're going to go, you know what? Forget this. I'm going to go somewhere else with my banking needs. Yeah. So where AI comes into play here, it seamlessly, very quickly in the back end, within a matter of seconds, less than a minute, can validate the documents you're showing with the identity, your physical presence in front of that device is the same, and it matches it seamlessly. And it's no longer you have to go down to the bank to open up an account. It's no longer you have to submit documents in person, let them photocopy your passport. Right. That all happens virtually from the comfort of your home and makes the enrollment process for our customers so
I mean,
much
so that's
easier.
just like literally like this, look at your phone
it's
and
that
you're
simple.
good to go. Okay.
Going back to the deepfake thing and this topic, I invite you to come to our interest booth. We have demos set up where you can see these actions happening in real time. You can see the simplicity of it. It's absolutely fantastic.
Okay. Do you have kittens?
No comment.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
If you don't know, we were talking earlier about there's some booths on the expo floor that have like goats and puppies.
Puppies.
I'm like, it's not
cheating.
fair.
It is
cheating, and you're evil. But I'll be over there later. Yeah. But thank you so much. So thanks, Jordan. Really appreciate it. Great conversation. Obviously, we could talk for a lot longer, but we can't. If you want to find out more, please visit all of our RSAC 2025 coverage by going to securityweekly.com/IntrustRSAC, which is a nice landing page somebody put together. Thanks, and we'll be back in a little bit with even more conversations.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate your time.
You bet. Welcome back to RSAC Conference 2025. We're still here. We're still recording live from Cyber Risk TV studio in Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. I'm Doug White, and this is a good one, okay? I'm going to tell you right now. So I read this bio, and I got all nervous, and I had to go have a couple of drinks. But this interview is with Amit Sinha, the CEO at DigiCert, and welcome, Amit.
Doug, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I was like, wow. I was reading this bio, and I was, and it started with like chapter 1. No, I'm giving Amit a hard time, but you were at Zscaler, you were at MIT, you've been all over the place. You're in the Bay Area now at DigiCert.
I am.
So that's really cool. I mean, I like that a lot. One of the things I know that we wanted to talk about was crypto agility.
Okay.
And firstly, I wanted you to give me like your sort of, what is that exactly? I mean, I know what I think, but I like to hear it from you. So give me a little rundown on that.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. So crypto agility, it's a hot topic these days, and I mean, we all know about human identities, right? Mm-hmm. When you authenticate through Okta or Azure and then access applications, we understand that. But what's hidden behind is the machine identity problem, right? Mm-hmm. For every human, there are 50x more machines.
Right.
So if you talk to any big organization, it's very common for them to have millions of these machine identities.
Absolutely.
Now, what's happening is 3-4 huge changes are happening in the industry. One, these identities are getting shorter and shorter lived. So think about like your passport. Your passport has a validity period, right. And if your passport started expiring every day, and you had 1 million passports to manage,
right.
It's a huge problem, right?
Yes.
So you need to be agile then, right? You can't have manual processes, right? So you need a system that can automate the life cycle, the identity life cycle management of all of these machines. And we haven't even started talking about AI agents and software and content. So all of this, the technical term is PKI,
mm-hmm.
Public Key Infrastructure. There's public and private infrastructure, but think about crypto agility as how do I automate the management of millions of these machine identities and workloads that are just expanding and proliferating in an organization.
Yeah, I mean, I've been calling this the ephemeral problem.
Yes.
Because we've moved from, like you said, static world to this world of, I'm going to pop up a bot.
Yeah.
It's going to solve a problem. It may last for seconds, milliseconds. It 100%. May last for a day. It may not last very long at all. And now so you and I were talking just a minute ago. I'm going to bring this up because you knew I was.
Okay.
We were talking about the lawyer bot.
Yeah, the lawyer bot.
and so on the surface, you say, I trust lawyer bot. But lawyer bot's an ephemeral machine that springs into being to answer a legal question. How do I know? How do I trust that? So, I mean, that's the essence of the crypto agility problem, right?
Yeah, in a way, right? Like now, AI agents are kind of the extension of the machine identity problem, right?
Yes.
Agent is what? Like a smart software, maybe a machine, maybe it's ephemeral. I mean, what do I want from a machine like this? First, like maybe I'll have 6 AI bots working for me. One being a Zoom avatar, one approving expense reports, maybe a lawyer chatbot negotiating contracts, right?
Yep.
What do I need for it? First, if they are operating on my behalf, they have to have strong identity.
Yes.
That they're.
You hope so.
Yeah, but more importantly, I also need a kill switch, right? Like,
that's what we're talking about.
I want, back to your ephemeral question. I don't want that agent to have perpetual identity and start acting on my behalf without even my permission and go rogue down the road, right? So maybe I say, hey, you're approved for a week, right? And after that, your identity expires and there's nothing you can do. What else do I need? I need them to, use encrypted communication, securely store information, right? So there's encryption, there's identity, there's authentication, authorization. What else do I need? Well, I need a log, right, of what actions have you taken,
right?
Kind of almost like a forensic log. I mean, these are all kind of back to the basics of PKI patterns of, authentication, authorization, encryption, applied to a new paradigm. And so, I think it's a fascinating world that we live in.
No, it is. I mean, it's sort of a repeat of the past world of like, okay, I'm going to go give you some money, like long time ago, and I just have to hope that you aren't just going to steal it or it's going to get lost or whatever. And so we put all these laws around banks and controls and things. And now we're back to this. I'm still sort of hung on the lawyer bot because that scares me worse than anything.
Right.
If it's acting on my behalf, that's very useful.
Yeah.
But so how do I do that? I mean, how do I get that machine identity so that I trust you and you trust me and we're all ephemeral and we're going to be gone really shortly?
I mean, look, it starts with, I say PKI and DNS, Doug, are like electricity and water, right?
Yep.
You need to have your foundations strong, right? So start with basics first. Do you have an inventory of all places that need machine identities, right? Number two, can I automate those identities? Can I have governance around that? Can I revoke when I need to, right? So all of this is back to what DigiCert does in a way with DigiCert One. What is DigiCert One? It is a PKI identity management platform, right? And we do this at scale for the biggest hyperscalers, the big businesses. What are we doing today? We are managing machine identities on the public side, on the private side, but ephemeral identities would be, and here's my Kubernetes workload that's spun up in the cloud. It needs an 8-hour certificate on it, right? So it's approved and authorized to run for 8 hours, right? You'll see similar patterns extend to AI agents. But for that to happen in a more holistic way, Doug, we need some more standards. People talk about MCP, the Model Context Protocol.
Right.
I mean, these are beginning to shape up, but things like identity, authentication, authorization haven't quite been thought through in a holistic way. So the industry does need a few standards in this area, but I think the patterns are very similar to the machine identity problem that we've solved.
Let's cache all this in the context of saying I need and hate, because it's always been there, DNS.
Yeah.
And we all need DNS.
100%.
It's one of the foundation building blocks of just about everything. There's almost no service now that's not querying it. So if I'm using DNS, how does that evolve in these models? Because right now DNS is just this ancient, untrusted thing, and it's an oracle. You whisper a question into a hole in the wall, and an answer comes back, and you have no idea who's on the, who's in that.
See, that's also a little bit of a misnomer. Like people, as I said, electricity and water, right? PKI, DNS. The issue is people think it just works till it doesn't. They have a flooding in the basement, or there's no electricity. Now, DNS is not just a name to IP map. DNS is like foundational to how traffic gets steered in a modern organization. Which CDN am I going to use? What's my resilience, right? How do I fail over? It's so foundational that when it's off, like for example, I think recently there was a Zoom outage that was attributed to DNS, records being...
Been a few.
And there's been many such examples, right? So DNS resilience is very key. Do you have DDoS protection? Back to kind of basics of, is your foundational DNS service important? But how does DNS and PKI come together, right?
Right.
The industry now is moving towards 47-day digital certificates from 398 days.
Yes.
Now imagine if you, and by the way, tied to that is domain validation that will eventually get down to 10 days.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
So what's the problem? Like, let's say, Doug, you run a service, Doug.com.
Right.
First, you need to have a robust DNS, so it's always resolving. But then now you need a certificate on that domain, but before I give you one, I need to validate that you own Doug.com through DNS. If I have to do this for 1 million DNS records, with shortening certificate lifetimes and validation periods, that automation better be bulletproof, right? Like, you know,
everything
rock
comes
solid.
crashing down.
Everything comes crashing down. You don't want a case where, for automation, I have to open up all my DNS just to do this PKI cert automation. So that's a security hole.
Yep.
But at the same time, you don't want brittle integration where, I tried and the DNS team is a separate team, separate system, didn't update the record, I didn't get it. Right. If you had to do it a million times in an organization, it is a problem, right? And we haven't even started talking about quantum and what that does to all of us.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a minute. How ephemeral do you see DNS and those certificates getting? I mean, to me, it's like the shorter lived they are, the better.
100%. Why is the industry going to shorter duration digital certificates? Because it's well understood that, keys and secrets, the shorter they are, the less exposure it is. You don't have to manage big revocation lists and this and that, right? So it's good security practice, but it's also forcing automation. I think the 47-day ballot that got passed a few weeks ago is sort of a, huge catalyst, a wake-up call for the industry to say, you need, rock-solid automation to make all of this work. Now, how short? Well, I used to work at Zscaler, right? At Zscaler, in some cases we were down to per session certs, right?
Well, it really should be
There's
that.
an 8-hour cert on a Frankfurt node where you can, where the privilege access can happen only for that 8 hours on a particular type of node. So it's back to that ephemeral question
and
that you were
that's
talking
actually
about.
getting into very specialized certificates, for...
Yeah, it's like, this authorization and this identity expires in 8 hours or,
right.
Something
and
like
it's
that.
only for this service at this time.
At this service, this type, finite duration.
So how do you, obviously the question is about one.
Right.
How does that kind of work for, say, domain managers? Because there's a lot of layers there.
Yeah.
So there's, like you said, there's not just, is this domain, securityweekly.com, valid? But are the underpinnings of that domain valid? Right. Are the owners of that domain valid? So it ultimately becomes an identity trust issue.
100%.
So how do you manage all that?
DigiCert One brings PKI and DNS into a very tight, single platform. DigiCert today serves 1/3 of the authoritative DNS queries in the world, right? So, we know how to do this at scale for some of the largest hyperscalers. But back to your, the granular permission problem. You don't do automation like some of the vendors might say, here's my DNS, here's an API, your Acme cert bot that does this PKI automation has this key and now it can do whatever it wants on the DNS, so I can do automation. That's not good. You've suddenly opened up your core DNS to some bot automation that's inserting records just so it can do its automation. You want very specific granular controls to say, here's the PKI team, here are the things that I want to automate, and here's my DNS, and they are all working in a tight, single pane of glass system, not siloed, cloud first, built for ephemeral identity and authorization infrastructure.
I think that means we're probably entering a period of Wild Westness where you're going to have people that have adopted things like this that are very single pane of glass controlled, and other people that are just going to be Wild Wested all over the place.
I think that the PKI industry is going through a renaissance, right? In the next 3 to 4 years, you're going to see probably a once in a 20, 30-year modernization cycle, right? Yeah. And some of that is also spurred by quantum, right? People, what quantum does, for example, is all the algorithms that go into the current trust fabric are broken immediately, right? So RSA is broken, Diffie-Hellman is broken, all the asymmetric algorithms get broken. So what's happening, Doug, is that NIST has passed these quantum-safe cryptographic algorithms, and they're available as standards. We run it on DigiCert One today, but that requires, again, a crypto agility, a modernization cycle. Yeah. And the path to the 47-day certs and shorter duration certs, even on the current cryptography, is the same path you take for post-quantum cryptography. You need a modern system that can give you an inventory of all your crypto assets. It can provide governance and policies and more importantly, fail-safe automation, right, to swap this. So today you're swapping, 47-day certs. Tomorrow you'll be swapping pre-quantum algorithms with post-quantum algorithms, and it's that crypto agility that prepares you, and that's the modernization cycle we're going through.
One of the things I did want to ask you about post-quantum, especially in regards to this, because like you said, and I've said, we count on things like DNS like we count on electricity.
Yeah.
We just assume it will be there. But those are changing things with PQC evolution. So basically, as those algorithms get broken, what should, say, me as a CISO, especially as a CISO, say a middle level company, I mean, the big guys are all, they're playing, but there's a lot of companies out there that don't have the infrastructure, should just immediately dive into this. To become more crypto agile, to get off the couch, what should they be doing right now in this almost pre-PQC world? It's maybe not even pre anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a here and now problem, Doug. That's a great question. I like this middle layer. Like the big companies have thought about that, and they've done some resolve. Yeah, they've done some homegrown things and other things, and they have resources. A lot of the 47-day cert, right, is a wake-up call for the CISO of the middle tier industry, right? They don't have a crypto specialist team. They don't have so. I mean, that's where I think leveraging a partner like DigiCert. We have a platform. It's cloud first. It's multi-tenant. You don't need to manage HSMs. You don't need to do a custom automation. So what do I advise CISOs? Okay. Yeah. Let's go through pain point 1, 2, 3. You're an organization. You have 10,000 employees. You have a small IT team, right? Let's start with your users. You have 10,000 users. Each user has a machine. There's probably 5 or 6 crypto things on it. We'll automate that. Step 1. Step 2. Let's do an inventory scan. Discover all your crypto, and all of that is just like plug and play, right? So we'll discover and say, hey, you have X number of identities in the clouds, some on your data centers. Now you have an inventory. Once you have an inventory, let's go with policies. You assign owners. It's kind of the back to basics, right? And you don't have to build stuff, right? You don't have to, and you can do more with less because the platform is doing it for you.
I mean, we really are going to need that at home. I mean, literally. I will say, I was at a presentation recently, not here, but I was with a client, and the pitch started with, now you'll want your SOC to implement, on the SOC team, and the response to the guy was like,
Where's my SOC? I'm the SOC team.
I'm the team. I'm the everything. And so I think that if you are in that situation, and a lot of people are, you definitely need to be looking at solutions now, because you're not going to want to be in that Wild West, left out of the game.
And I think, look, organizations are being asked to do more with less, right? And so there's an operational cost to it. Many of the customers in the middle tier that we talk to suffer from outages. Those outages are on their critical systems because certs have expired. That's a cost. So how do I do more with less, with a smaller team, but a system that gives me fail-safe automation? That's what we are driving towards with DigiCert.
That sounds great. Well, for you to find out more about DigiCert, please visit www.digicert.com, or you can go to our landing page at securityweekly.com/DigiCertRSAC. Thank you, Dr. Sinha. That was amazing.
Thank you,
I'm really pleased that you could be here with us today. Thanks all of you for joining in. We will be back with the wrap up in a few minutes. We'll be back tomorrow with more interviews just like this here at Cyber Risk Alliance TV. Thanks all of you. We'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.